Hi folks, you're with Tacitus Today. Tacitus Today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio radio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about a few sort of documentaries or online vids and TikToks that I've seen recently where college students, particularly the radical sort of leftist ones, are complaining about any moves that might restrict as what they see as their freedoms. And they perceive freedom as the right to fight back against the man, fight Nazis, and go on climate change protests, my body, my choice, and all this. So any flavor of the month activist causes, they want the right to be able to quit class and go out and wave placards. They expect to be fed and water, given food and water, and they expect to be given the ready-made placards, some even paid to be there. They expect that activists, NGO agitators should be paid salaried staff members on the university campus to go and help them organise, give them the bullhorns and the chants to memorize, and all these sorts of things. And they see that as freedom. That's the freedom to express themselves. Again, this is in their cognizance, and keep in mind that we're talking primarily young women here who are 19, 20 years old and who have been insanely radicalized through the education system. But they perceive that these causes are going to create equity, and equity is the goal. There are Nazis everywhere trying to stop this equity. So that's their sort of in their wider sort of view of freedom. Now, I've put together an amalgam or brought together an amalgam of different videos and TikTok videos and so on to do this. So it's not focusing on one college or another, but rather a bit of a spread, number of colleges. So in one case here, and I'll focus on this just for the moment, the university, which is an specialist arts university, it specialises effectively in sociology. So it's got gender studies, gay lesbian studies, African American studies. There's barely a legitimate pass or fail course in the whole university. It's all very, very leftist, and the college kids, certainly by the way they talk and behave, they wouldn't have made it out of junior high school in the days of pass or fail exams. So we're talking about a huge tranche of affirmative action kids, low IQ, that are being wheeled into these colleges. Now, the college is give or take about 80% taxpayer funded, and then 20% from various private groups. Now, in order to take over some of these colleges, the very cashed up NGOs, which are like fronts for George Soros type organizations, the NGOs, they get in there and they stump up some cash, and then somehow they're able to get in and take over the university, board of trustees or board of managers, board of directors, whatever you want to call it, and pack them with known radical activists. So it's no accident here. There's no even slight effort to hire the best qualified, people with a career in or knowledge of academia or anything of that nature. They've stacked the whole board with activists. The president is an activist. They create a diversity, equity, and inclusion department, which is, in one of this case, headed by a half-black, wait for this, a truly corpulent half-black Hispanic lesbian who's becoming a trans person. I didn't know you could do that, but anyway, there you go. So talk about ticking all the boxes there. Now, the diversity department got to a point where the number of people in it as consultants and employees and all who come from the NGO activist sector, by the way, they outnumbered the teaching staff in the university, for Christ's sakes. And so, well, hey, hold on, how could that even happen? Now, this on top of that, all these activist NGOs on climate activism gay lesbian activism, my body, my choice, abortion activism. Well, every activist cause had their own special unit inside the university, ready to sort of have a rent-a-mob, placard waving mob on demand as soon as there was a rally to be organised. The teaching staff were giving the kids time off. They were even giving them credits as if they'd done an essay or something important. So they were encouraged, go out and be an activist, go out and placard wave, go out and chant slogans, and I will give you some sort of a credit or a distinction for being an activist, and we'll just pretend you did a great essay or a great thesis or something like that. So the whole education system was being undermined. The kids were encouraged to go out and wave placards. Now, on top of that, they were given transport to wherever the place was. Would they have transported themselves? Probably not. They were given food and drink, so that was a well-paid logistical machine there. Would they have gone if they had to pay for food and drink themselves and portable toilet facilities were being put on? Who pays for that? So there's a lot of infrastructure goes in, and these kids go, well, you'll have to find your own food and drink. You'll have to find your own way to get there. If you want to go to a bathroom, then you're just going to have to find a public facility, or that sort of thing. I think a lot of the kids were going, nah, I'll pass. But because all that infrastructure is laid on, same as it's laid on to help the mass illegal migration movement. Without the massive logistical support for these people, they wouldn't be attempting those journeys. They wouldn't even consider attempting those journeys, let alone undertaking them. But anyway, so the students are there. Now, the government, one particular regional government, got a little bit sick of the brazen off the planet hysterical hatred of white society, hatred of all white achievement, and the trashing of all white history, these sorts of things. So they gave the university an ultimatum saying, look, you've got to stop this, and you need to actually focus on education and turning out students that can pass exams and who've met a standard of rigorous education. The activist board of directors came back and said, no, get fucked. And so they were removed. The president was removed. Now, I had a look at the members of the board of directors in this particular one, a board of trustees, I think they're called, and the president of the university. And again, they're rabid activists. They're not just people who are employed. They're there to engage in nothing but fanatical activism and to facilitate it and support it, to encourage it, to finance the activism. And they believe that's their right. So they equate the use of taxpayer dollars to do these sorts of things. This is freedom as they see it. The freedom to do it, the freedom of thought, freedom to think what I want. Well, let's look at the opposite side. What about freedom to say the white achievements in history, straight white males, Edison and the light bulb, or Louis Pasteur and discovering microbiology, these sorts of things like that. Shouldn't that be celebrated? Oh no, that's Nazi. You do that, that's Nazi. So they've got a strange view of what freedom is, and the idea that you're not paid and given distinctions to quit class and go and wave placards, then that's being denied freedom. So their kinds of freedom is, well, I want to go and be an activist. I want to do it, and I want to fight Nazis. Therefore, if you stop me or say that actually while I'm at college I have to attend class, then you're preventing my freedom, which means you're a Nazi, and so on it goes. So a ridiculous point of view and attitude. But I think it sums up a lot of the activist sort of attitudes that pervade college and college campuses. But the government put on a board of trustees, and there's one document, a short documentary that but instead of saying the board of trustees that were qualified in terms of academia and higher education, advanced education, instead of saying these people were all qualified, they were all far right. which they weren't, and they're not. The president of the called the new president of the college says, "Look, we're going to focus on academic standards here. The days of activism are gone. You're here to attend class. You're here to learn. You're here to pass exams and so on." And things like gender studies and lesbian dance studies, these sorts of things, the government's going to stop financing them. You can't get a government loan. Now you can still do the course, and if you want to go and borrow the money yourself privately, then you can go and do that. There's nothing stopping you from doing it, but you just won't get government handouts. Now, similarly, the people that do those courses are often given various. Say they did 1 year of gender studies, then they would go off and be activists somewhere in some foreign country, Africa. They go to Africa and work for the United Nations or UNICEF or some NGO in Africa, and they would be paid to do that, and then they would get half their course or all of their gender studies course paid for. So there are various backdoor financing of radical activists who would then be employed by the NGOs and would become radical activists themselves, as in street activists, and spreading the activism around, facilitating illegal mass migration and so on. So it was a way of creating another class, like a cadre of activists that could go out. So the universities were, or this particular university, others like them, were purposefully focused on, in conjunction with NGOs, of creating the next generation of commissars, activist commissars to push the globalist ideology. So anyway, these are the sort of things that are going on, but there's an effort to stop it. Now, the response is, well, this is outrageous. They're not allowed to do this. They're taking away my freedom. Well, no, you never had freedom. You were a political activist commissar doing the bidding of these other people. What you just decided you wanted to go out and wave placards about climate, and no, you didn't. You're encouraged to do it by your lecturer. You were given, not only was there no penalty in doing it, you were actually given credits and distinctions for being an activist, and you were effectively paid to do it, and all logistics to go out. So this idea that's free. So there was these imaginary freedoms, of course, didn't exist. They exist only in some ideological fantasy universe. So I think governments all over the Western world should be doing this. Saying, look, if you want to do your gender studies or your African American studies or your lesbian dance, fine, go ahead and do it. But you're going to have to pay for it yourself and find the money to do it, to pay for it in the private market. The government isn't going to subsidise you or help you or guarantor the loan or anything of that nature. And so you would see an absolute plummeting of, there'd be hardly anybody doing those courses, because academically and from an employment opportunity, they're relatively useless, although they're helpful if you want to get a job as a diversity officer or something like that. But it's interesting that the college kids, particularly the girls, less so the boys, but particularly the girls, and particularly the lesbians, they viewed that they equate freedom with activism. That they didn't seem to separate the two, or seemed unable to separate the two. My right to be an activist, to fight all these imaginary Nazis, means I have freedom. No, you don't. You've got the freedom to go to college and learn. You've got the freedom to go to college and work hard, study hard. That's the freedom you have. Why don't you go and do that? But this is something that they couldn't comprehend. And really an entire generation of activist-minded or activist-indoctrinated people are out there. And the things they equate, whilst they equate activism with freedom, they also equate anyone with an alternative view as a Nazi. So Nazis aren't allowed on campus, or people they declare as Nazis aren't allowed on campus. But then they talk about, well, you must have freedom of expression and freedom of thought. So if their freedoms, as they perceive it, the activism is restricted, then that's an outrage. But anyone they disagree with as a Nazi should be denied the freedoms that they themselves say that they're entitled to. For goodness sakes, you've been a Tassus today, your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.